So next up, we are going to talk to Elizabeth Lee and hear from her. And we're, I think, looking at just a really vastly changing ecosystem in digital health. And we're lucky to have Prem Sreenivasan, the Director of Medical Affairs at HITLAB, one of the world's leading agencies for identifying and for really testing the efficacy, whether economic, technical, clinical, or experiential, of these emerging digital health technologies. Prem and Elizabeth, thank you for joining us. And Prem, I'll hand the virtual microphone over to you.
Well, thanks, Dan. And please join me in welcoming Elizabeth Lee from PA Consulting to the session. Elizabeth has a impressive background in the digital space with focus on healthcare, working on both the East and the West Coast, and is presently in the digital space at PA Consulting. So welcome, Elizabeth.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so as we get started, perhaps you would start with a couple of words on your background and some introductory remarks, and also some of your experience that has shaped your career so far.
Yeah, thanks again for having me. So I have worked in digital pretty much my entire career. I actually started off as a teacher, and there was this whole thing called the internet boom happening, and I thought I should get myself involved with that. So I've worked in a lot of different sectors, from financial services, CPG, technology, travel, entertainment, medical device. I've been client side, agency side, startups, incubators within a larger organization, and now sitting on the consulting side. The one thing that's remained consistent is that I have remained in the digital space, always leveraging what I call the best of breed approach. So what works in one place, how do we apply that to the next? And what doesn't work, could it actually work in another sector? And that actually, we've seen that happen too. And I like to play in the worlds between digital product development and digital marketing. So just understanding how to get someone to an experience and then delivering that experience and optimizing it for whatever that may be. In financial services, a lot of it's acquisition and self-servicing. Within medical device, it's a lot of education and engagement. So it varies, and those use cases vary across those sectors.
No, that's terrific. And the fact that you're spanning all these different industries and businesses is a very unique perspective. So we're looking forward to hearing more about it. So tell us how you define digital in these contexts, and particularly some of the areas of overlap.
Yeah. So when you focus on innovation, it's always everything, something new is introduced. And I always say digital adoption is when we see this new digital experience. And it's the moment from going from being new and sampled to being valued and applied in real life. So in everyday life, we are doing these things. And I remember in my personal life when Instagram had a swipe up feature for buy now. As soon as I sampled that, it was born into my life, and it actually changed the way that I shop today. Through the pandemic, we've had to embrace video calls and collaborative workspaces in ways that we never did before. Did I love having to learn all these new collaboration platforms? Absolutely not. But it was born out of necessity. And so that was a great lesson to me, that adoption can be driven by a surprise and delight. I love, shopping via Instagram. I see someone have a really nice dress on and I say, oh, swipe up and I'm going to go buy that. On the flip side, it can be born out of absolute necessity, frustration. A pandemic drives adoption of many new different opportunities.
So as you go forward in this space, what do you think are some evolving themes that you would like to highlight, particularly for successful digital adoption?
So Evolving themes, I think, when we look at just life sciences in general, and we see this opportunity for us to change the way that we actually treat patients. And that can go from anything from a digital support to an actual digital therapeutic that's been proven. We can use these in concert with traditional care. We can use these in replacement of actual care. And what I love about the digital space is that it's always changing and we can always improve the experience. So when we think about an IV treatment, can we actually change that experience? Could we lower their anxiety? Could we enhance their relaxation? Would that actually make the experience better? I think so. If you lower, and if we take that one step further and you lower the heartbeat rate of these individuals as they're receiving some kind of treatment, could that actually change the outcome? And we see that happening more and more today. They're monitoring patients for adverse events and side effects, helping patients get care earlier, helping them stay adherent, helping them stay on medication longer, staying on therapy longer. And that actually is changing the outcomes of that treatment. There's fewer visits to the hospital, fewer visits to urgent care. And that just completely can change when you start combining all of these things together. That can completely change the outcome of care. And so I think and one of the things that I think is really unique about life sciences is that it doesn't take on the same adoption trajectory as consumer apps. If your doctor told you, hey, record your vital signs every day, and we could actually prevent you from having to go into the ER. I think I'm going to listen to that doctor's advice much more so than listening to me tell you to swipe up on Instagram. So there's a significant tolerance for experimentation from patients and HCPs when we can prove some value back to their patients and HCPs. And I think that's a really big opportunity. It's very difficult to achieve value on both sides, but it's a powerful combination. And ultimately, when we say that adoption is driven by value, by perceived value, when we can deliver that, it is in the healthcare space, it's exponentially more um, uh, valuable to everybody because we can actually affect outcomes.
Well, that's terrific insights and very valuable to the audience itself, and a great summary of current successes. So moving forward, in terms of newer spaces for digital adoption and new solution providers and so forth, do you have any other suggestions that you would like to present to the session today?
Sorry, new spaces?
Yeah, new solutions for digital adoptions. Any other items that come to mind that you would like to highlight?
I mean, there's so many of them. I
Sure,
know
but
that cognitive behavioral therapy has been proven. We're seeing
yeah,
that applied across the spectrum for people who have ADD, people with smoking cessation, drug addiction. So we see that happening, and then we start seeing how do we apply those same things to other states like sleep and improving sleep, and then lowering anxiety, like I said. So when someone's going for an MRI, that's very stressful. Can we actually find ways to lower their anxiety beforehand? So again, changing the treatment experience, I think, is a really big opportunity, obviously. And then once over time, we can start to kind of measure those outcomes. And I think we will see a change in those outcomes, those clinically proven outcomes.
yeah. Thank you for those insights. Those are very clear public health areas of great interest to in the current COVID and perhaps even in the post-COVID timeframe. So as we head into the home stretch, I wanted to try and ask you if you had any words of advice based on your broad experience to this session about watchouts for teams that are embarking on these types of programs.
Yeah. So I always say build with a foundation in research, insights, design, and validation. In life sciences, we put so much behind R&D, rightfully so. But if you add in all of our other work streams about market access, reimbursement, KOL publications, Congress and trials, we put so much into the actual product. We can afford to put a little extra time into our digital products and really make sure that we are addressing a need and that we're providing that valuable experience back to patients in HCPs. So research, insights, design, and validation. And also within the digital mindset, we always talk about agile, we talk about minimum viable product. Really, that is build for now and build for the future. We know that healthcare reimbursement for digital health, digital therapeutics, telehealth, remote monitoring, we know those things are coming, though they haven't been fully vetted today in the ecosystem, but we know it's coming. So build for now and then build for later so that we can take advantage of that healthcare shift and that we're not caught flat-footed. And then that also helps us create a pathway to get to incrementally up our services, to get to that next level, to meet patients where they are. And I also think that taking a cue from startups and consumer trends is really important. What I love about having been on all different sides of this ecosystem is that startups think without risk. They think very big. They have no risk. And when you apply that then to a large company that has a very high risk profile and a lot to lose, all of that experience kind of ends up being dulled down a bit. But if we can find a way to kind of meet in the middle, I think there's a special sauce there. Understanding how to innovate within the regulatory environment is really powerful. Finding your allies within some of the more restrictive functions like your medical and your safety, your regulatory and your legal teams, finding your allies within those groups that have a digital mindset that can help you identify solutions that can work within those confines. Super important. When I worked in financial services and we were launching self-servicing platforms that had just never been done before, it was the key to my success was actually working with my legal counterpart and him working side by side to find out how we could get over these hurdles. And that was what allowed us to kind of get these experiences out there, learn from them, optimize from them. And then I think the last thing that I think people need to kind of take away is that digital is an evergreen strategy. We can't launch something and then forget about it. We always want to be putting something back into it, understanding the insights of how people are using it, and then optimizing that experience. So a lot of times I've seen we put out an app, it sits out there and no one is actually monitoring it and evolving that experience. So we really want to make sure that we are putting something out there for to evolve and not just putting something out there for digital sake.
Well, that's wonderful, and I do thank you for that for the emphasis on the evergreen strategy of the portfolio. So the portfolio keeps evolving with time and meeting some of the consumer-based insights. I wish I had more time to keep you and to ask you many more questions. And as we come towards the end, I do want to thank you for coming into the session and providing your expertise that spans so many different industries. And I'd like to thank you on behalf of the symposium organizers, the audience, and welcome back. We should be welcoming you back at a future session to seek additional insights from your journey. So over to you, Stan, and thank you, Elizabeth.
It's wonderful. Thank you, Prem. Thank you, Elizabeth, for a terrific presentation and just a wonderful interview about what's working and what's not working and how to engage stakeholders and champions internally. That's absolutely critical and without a doubt a fundamental component of being able to be really well seen and well heard within the ecosystem. And without a doubt, it's almost like that emotional quotient theory that we've read from Danny Goleman, emotional intelligence. And there's a certain amount of EQ people need to understand how they fit within groups and group settings. But then there's also a certain amount of emotional quotient and organizational intelligence needed to understand how we fit within organizations and how to engage other people within the organizations, across the organizations, or even in outside organizations, that are fundamental to understanding our success, to align our perspectives, and to make sure that we are, as leaders within institutions, we're properly navigating the ecosystem with the right partners and the right people there. So again, thank you both for that. Greatly appreciated. And I think the lessons learned so far in today's presentations have been incredible. They've really been focused on the need to understand in our first session with what Paul Saunier, again from PA Consulting, and from the folks at GSK and MICRA, really making sure that there's evidence there, and that we have that kind of evidence that is going to help lead toward more importance and greater levels of understanding of how these technologies are adopted across the ecosystem. I think one of the things that we see is that the evidence, it doesn't all have to be FDA approval evidence. It can be evidence for digital health studies within small groups, experiential. If you're trying to have your technology adopted within an ecosystem, you can make sure that if it's a hospital ecosystem, that your technology is working within that hospital ecosystem, and then bring it to another one. But that is something that we have seen is critical. What are hospitals trying to do? And again, any questions from the audience on this, I'd love to hear from you all. We have just a tremendous audience from around the world, across ecosystem stakeholders. Just looking at the audience list now, from professors to investors to people from life sciences and pharma to health plans and hospitals. We have a number of digital health tech startups as well, and so and people from Europe, certainly the Netherlands. So if you have any questions about this, it's a great time to have these sorts of discussions, because ultimately this digital health ladder, if you will, and really making sure that there's a ladder of evidence, that we're going up the first rung to the second rung to the third rung. Not unlike molecule studies that we're seeing happen across life sciences and pharmaceutical companies over the last 100 years, really, for the most part, post World War II. But how are, when you do a phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 with larger and larger populations, how are those being proven? Is there statistical evidence? Is there statistical validation that you can take to a health plan, that you can take to a large employer, and that you can tell them about what is working with your technology, with your digital health product, or what is not working? Again, one of the things that we're doing right now is working with a group called Curia, a women's health tech company, and understanding these sorts of technologies as well. We're seeing tremendous evidence of early adoption of whether it's experiential or whether it's clinical, of why these sorts of technologies are so important, and how to make sure that we have the evidence at a small, medium, large level, with small, medium, large populations, different types of instruments that we can use, etc. And the instrumentation on that level is also very important as well. That we have to make sure we have whether it's a GAD-7, which is the standard of measurement for most mental health studies these days, or the SF-12, SF-36, which stands for the standard form for quality of life. Again, 12 question or 36 question that measures how patients are doing in these sorts of studies. That is absolutely critical. We just received a question from Jeanette about what are the most significant issues facing tech, like a wearable and or a sensor in clinical trials. And the issues are enormous. It seems like, wearing an Apple Watch, like what I'm wearing here now, wouldn't be a major issue within a clinical trial. However, there are so many different issues. First of all, the clinical trials community needs to have tech and needs to have readings that are equal to or better within the realm of accuracy and efficacy of something that you would see in a hospital, or something that you would see within a physician's office. And so if we don't have that validated data, i.e., does an Apple Watch give you the same heart rate that a heart rate monitor in a hospital gives you, then we can't use an Apple Watch in a clinical trial even to begin with. And then the evidence then moves toward, has the Apple Watch been used in any clinical trials before, and for what measurement, and has that measurement been compared to the current standard of measurement? and that's critical. And so to talk a little bit about this is Richard Hanbury. He is the founder and the CEO of Sana, and he's going to talk a little bit about breakthrough status, and number one, what it is, and number two, how do you get it? Obviously, in today's ecosystem of digital health technologies, if you can get breakthrough status with the FDA, that means you're on a fast track for a clinical trial. And he's going to tell us a lot more about this. Richard, welcome back to the program. Good to have you.
Thank you very much, and sorry I'm late.
No, not at all, not at all. And appreciate your time, knowing that you are swamped with, again, from HITLAB studies over the last several years, one of the most impressive digital health technologies that HITLAB scientists have seen enter our labs and our studies. First of all, tell us a little bit about what does breakthrough mean? Tell us about that to start with. And for people that don't know Richard, please look him up on LinkedIn. We'll post his LinkedIn in the chat box. If you don't know Sana, there's tons of media about Sana, from CNBC to a number of other TV shows, TV programs, etc. But Richard, tell us about breakthrough. What does it mean?
Yeah, so thank you. Yes, so breakthrough status, the reason why it's so important for startups is for two reasons. One is that it gives an expedited review for a de novo. So it takes sort of what can be up to a 12-month timeline, especially now that the FDA has got such a heavy backlog, down to what is in theory 30 to 45 days. Obviously, with the current FDA backlog, that 30 to 45 day review time is likely to slip, but it does mean that you're at the front of the preference queue, hopefully. The second very large thing it does for startups is, so under the last administration, there was a ruling under MCIT that basically was designed to make novel technologies available more quickly to people who need them. So the whole impetus of breakthrough was, okay, let's give devices that the moment they have their approval, they get reimbursement under CMS, under Medicare and Medicaid. Now, given that normally that's sort of a 3-4 year timeline with very large amounts of data, that is a massive shortcut. Now, currently that MCIT ruling isn't actually being yet implemented. CMS basically put up their hands and went, this is too hard for us to implement, we're figuring it out, but we'll come back to you in December. But they came back with various things that don't apply to us, like, do all these breakthrough devices apply to the elderly? Do they have safety data? All these kind of things. So yeah, the shorter answer is much quicker approval for a de novo and fast track on reimbursement.
Okay, that's fantastic. So it gives everyone an understanding of what is breakthrough status, and then why is it important. And let's talk a little bit about how to get breakthrough status, which you were just awarded by the FDA. Let's talk a little bit about the process you had to go through. When did you start? When did you receive it officially? And give us the truth. How much did it cost? How many human hours does it take? Let the audience know some details here.
Let me go back one stage before that, because I had a talk just recently with a fellow relation company that is in the migraine space. And very early on, we very nearly went down the migraine pathway because it is an unmet need. But it's an unmet need that has very expensive drugs that don't work very well, where the people who produce those drugs are viciously defending their territory against newcomers. We chose to go down the path of fibromyalgia in retrospect, purely by luck. It happened that we did a large study that had a lot of different people in different kinds of pain, and fibromyalgia just came out of the top as what we had the best result on. Turns out it was a very lucky market to go into. One, because there are no other devices at all that treat fibromyalgia. And two, the drug treatments are extremely lacking. And they're generic and very cheap, so no one even cares about the money that is being spent on them. So the first thing for anybody in the sort of medical device and digital health space is, if you have a platform that has the capability of going after different areas, it's really worthwhile looking very carefully about which indication you should be going after in the first place. Because for us, fibromyalgia, because it didn't have any existing good treatments out there at all, meant that we could apply for breakthrough status. So that's the first thing about breakthrough status. Can you choose an indication that has a high unmet need, that is debilitating or life-threatening, and that therefore, if you can help them, you are able to go get breakthrough status. So that's the kind of really, really key thinking to do early on, because we lucked into it. We didn't think this through from the start. And back when we started, breakthrough status wasn't really that big a deal where it is now. So that's the first lot of it. We had data. There are basically two, either you've got to have a very large amount of data, or you've got to have very detailed data that shows how you can drastically improve people's lives so either small numbers where you're showing drastic improvement, or large numbers of a study that is sort of pivotal size study but early data. So either of those two are good. And then the thing that everyone doesn't want to hear, but is very definitely true within most things within the FDA, but particularly breakthrough status, which is it's really important who you hire to help you to do it. We hired the folks at MICRA. We did the large majority of the work internally and had them vet and improve the final offering. And we should have got input earlier, because we prepared a whole submission and they were like, nah, you want to represent the data in this way, this way, and this way. And it was a very large amount of more work internally. But it did then get us across the line. So back to your timeline question. We started doing Q-subs on a Mount Sinai neuropathic pain study that is still ongoing back in 2018. That gave us some background of, okay, how does the FDA view these things? How does our particular group within the FDA view these things? And we're in the neuro devices group within the FDA, and the consistent feedback is they always want to see studies that are 120 people or more. So whatever your stats tells you that you can get away with from a efficacy and size of effect point of view, if it's under 120, doesn't matter, you still need 120. If you're a drug and you've got a 5 or 10% efficacy and you need a 1,000-person study, then you need a 1,000-person study. But us in the device world, where we're happier with, we're not happy with effect sizes like under 20 or 30%, you're still going to need 120 as your size if you're in the neuro division. If you're in cardiac or any other division, just find out what the rule of thumbs are for your areas, and find out what the rule of thumbs are before you have a Q-sub, because the Q-sub can take you a whole bunch of time to find out what the rule of thumb is, where if you'd asked around, you might have been told the answer. I do know people who have outsourced all of their FDA work to consultants. I don't know many people that have been happy with that. What worked really well for us was to have a very good internal resource plus some external help. And I think, you know, that if you have the choice and if you have the funding to get someone on board internally who really understands your company, that is, I think, the safest route. But obviously that's a really big luxury, and we lucked in with our current COO who had all those skills. For those that don't have those skills, just consider how you're interfacing with your consultants. So you need someone internally who really understands what you're doing. We also have a really good quality, new quality engineer, and that kind of whole area is utterly key. And if you're a new startup and you haven't got your quality system under control with some internal resource, then find a way of doing that, because that's utterly key to the whole FDA process as well.
That's fantastic. And again, thank you for taking time. We know how busy you are with this extraordinarily impactful product, and congratulations again on breakthrough status. Thank you for joining us, Richard.
Thank you.